is up, everyone? It's been a while since I've made another video, so I just thought I would show off all the 3D printing I've been doing over the last, I'd say, 6 months now. I got a 3D printer maybe back in January, but it took a while for me to sort of get started, learning how to use it, configuring, all that fun stuff. And then a pandemic hit, and I found myself with a ton more time, so I got started with 3D printing. Okay, let's show off the first model I did, which is Ahri from League of Legends. Now, these object files are available online for free. Someone made these and just put them up. So the actual model itself is very impressive because I didn't make it. We'll go on to that a bit later, but a lot of what you see from people 3D printing, which is fine because it's an art form in itself, the later parts, the painting and such, which is, I've done a shit job on this one. But when you see a super complex model like this, there are incredibly talented people who do the hard work making the 3D object part, and most beginners, like myself included, are a long way off being able to make something like this in modelling software. But here we go, this was my first big 3D print, and this was really fun. It was challenging to print. You'll see that a lot of the beginner mistakes I made was just not being able to paint. Like, if you're worried about not having painting skills, I literally hadn't picked up a paintbrush in about 15 years maybe, or more, like primary school. I hadn't done any painting, so you'll see, like, I can't even paint in the lines. It's not so obvious. If it's on a shelf, it looks fine, to be honest. I think it looks pretty good, but if you zoom in, look at that face. I can't paint. This was my first attempt, and I still had a lot to learn. This also took a really long time. I would say like 8 hours perhaps just painting, just because I had to go over it so many times, had to get out the water to keep trying to erase what I'd done in terms of going over the lines, and just working with colours, and really can't be discouraged at all if what you're making at first looks really bad. So anyway, this was my first big print, and then along with the League theme, I tried again with another one, and that's not quite in the picture, but you get the point. So this worked out a little bit better. So I had more practice. Still doesn't really look... It looks sort of passable. If you from a distance, nice turnaround. These models are so good, and even however shit you are at painting, the quality of these models really carries what you're doing here. But yeah, this was just attempt 2. It was really, one of the big lessons I took away was going over in layers. You want to do lots and lots of small layers rather than just trying to lay the paint on super thick on your first time round. So that was my model 2. This is all League of Legends stuff. And then I decided to try my first old school RuneScape model, which was the Varrock Stray Dog with the Santa hat on. So you can tell I did this around February time when the Christmas event had just been out recently. What this meant was I was able to work out how to extract RuneScape models from old school RuneScape. This is just a small print at first, but this was a massive step in learning how to produce bigger things later. So this was super cool. This is the Varrock Stray Dog, and really the incredible part about this was just learning to use the 3D models. So what you might see from lots of people mass printing things, like Jad is a popular one, you have to be able to... There are certain models, especially NPCs in RuneScape, which can be converted super easily. It's once you know how to do it, it's a 5-10 minute job to convert, put it into a 3D printer format, and then you can just print it out nicely. And the Varrock Stray Dog is an example of one of these. So I haven't done too many more after this, because I sort of considered and checked this off as learned, so I didn't make too many other printouts like this, because I sort of considered this done. Like, I'm not going to print out Jad and all the different raids bosses and all that sort of stuff, because they'll look cool, and they might be interesting to paint, and I may do them in the future, but this was sort of a step finished, learning how to use the models. Then, next, going back to League of Legends, I made Katarina's Blade. Now, I'm not sure this is really going to fit in the shot, but this is a full-sized blade from League of Legends. Yeah, this was a really interesting project. So the actual base blade model itself is pulled from a Skyrim mod, to be specific, and this is what gives it the shape, so this base shape of the blade. And then I went in and converted some patterns I found online to a 3D object. This was a first run through, so if I do this again, I'll talk about later what I'll do next time. But it's basically just a raised model based on colours. So I made the pattern black and the background white, and that created this raised effect that I could produce a 3D model from. And this ended up looking pretty cool. But the major design flaw with this, and I will get back to this shortly, is that it's really flimsy. This will fall apart so easily. You can't really swing this around like a sword at all. This has a major design flaw, which is you have to print it in parts. So you'll see these joins, and these joins are just flat. They're flat right now, so whenever you just have to glue it together on a flat surface, which really doesn't create a very strong join. The other major design flaw of this is I didn't spend enough time sanding. So I'm really highlighting the flaws in my prints at the moment, but look, it's not quite flat, so you need to do a lot more work sanding. This is a really time-consuming process, but you get some cool things in the end. So anyway, that was Cat's Blade done. And then we go on to the next big 3D print job, which was a toxic blowpipe. This one I am a lot more happy with. So what we did here is this is actually still in multiple parts like Cat's Blade, but it may not be obvious at all. So there is a join in the center of the blowpipe. You may be able to see it. It is there, but when you aren't looking at it, you probably won't even notice. Now what this was me actually working in Maya, which is a 3D modeling software, and I went in and edited the parts to include a sort of joining piece, which means basically just a big nub in the center of the body of the blowpipe and a hole in the tail of the blowpipe, and pretty simple, they join together, so there is a much greater surface area in the join here, and you can pretty much swing this blowpipe around as hard as you want around your head. It's never coming apart. I use a strong industrial superglue, and I have tried it. I have thrown a test model around the place, literally thrown it at a wall as hard as I could, and it would not split. So I've thrown away that now because the wings snapped off. But the actual join that I was focused on, it just is completely secure now. You just can't break it. Like, you snap the plastic off in other places before you actually broke the join. The join is now that strong. But anyway, this was really cool. I'll give the full turnaround. This is a toxic blowpipe. Probably wouldn't be out of place, if I say so myself, in like one of those RuneFest photos. Someone in the rest of their cosplay gear or whatever, they could be throwing around my blowpipe. That'd look cool. So anyway, yeah, those are my big models, because it takes a lot of time and material to make those. I haven't considered selling anything yet, so my budget isn't unlimited to make these larger prop style things. I would say that blowpipe cost £30 in materials, including some testing prints and stuff like that. The plastic isn't super cheap if you have to keep using it and you're not sure on your models, because half the time your model won't be quite right. You need to print it again, you need to do test prints. It can be an expensive process to make one of these. And now we're going with smaller figures. This was one of the more complex figures I made, which is Niev from Old School RuneScape. Look how bad that cape is. We'll come back to that. So this was me literally just printing a cape out. The thing that I did wrong with Niev is I printed this all in one go. So this shield, the spear, the cape, it was all one part, and then I had to messily cut. If you look at the bottom of them especially, get the upskirt, Niev, the amazing 3D models from RuneScape, but this was all done in one print, which is a wrong way to do it, because the spear's a bit wonky, the shield doesn't look quite right, and you need to make sure that things are all attached to the ground. So it will never look quite as good as what I'll show later. And the cape, I had to use my painting skills here. What I have learnt is you want to work around what you're good at, and I am not great at painting, even though I'm trying to improve. So anywhere I can create patterns on the model, I'm trying to do, instead of ending up with a cheesecake like that with me going all over the place with the yellow paint. This was now probably one of the prints that I'm most proud of, Zulrah. Now this was a big project. There is no in-game model that looks like this for you to just pull out. There is Zulrah, and there are things like the pillars and some rocks, but it's on you to put together the final finished model itself. And also, Zulrah, when he comes as an object file ripped from the game directly, he does not come posed nicely like this. So what I learned to do for Zulrah is I rigged up Zulrah in the modelling program, you know, like how any animators would work, and I moved him around, I gave him a skeleton, and I posed him, and then I printed him. Which was, I've gone over that in a few seconds, but that was a ton of work learning how to do that. All of these what I'm saying is, you have to understand coming pretty much completely from scratch. So if you're looking at these and thinking, wow, some of these look a bit complicated to make, it's a lot of hard work, but it's definitely doable for any beginner. You just need to be willing to put some time towards it, which, if you're still in quarantine, you probably have lots of. So yeah, got the full turnaround to Zulrah. Right, and then we're going to go back to League of Legends one more time before some of the last RuneScape prints I've been doing. This is Akali. Let's see if I can... This camera shows off properly, as I'm kind of proud of this one. Adjust the camera angle a bit. There we go. This is again using the model from the same person who made these two, but this time I spent a lot more time practicing painting, and this was sort of coming back to it, trying it again, now I knew what I was doing. So this wasn't actually based on the Prestige version of Akali, this was all my own colour design, and I just had to sort of work with the base model. It doesn't quite match up to the skin in game, I think, but at the end of the day, I think this looks quite cool. This wasn't done any differently to the way I did Ari and Kai'Sa over there, but this was just done after a bit more practice, basically. This is going to be coming back to the same thing I did on print 1, but this time I know I'm doing it a little bit more. There's still a long way to go, obviously. You'll probably, even at this camera angle, be able to notice bad lines, or, like, if I was an expert painter, I'd be able to do the back dragon, like, incredibly nicely, but this is the best I could do with incredibly low painting skills. There we go, I thought this looked pretty cool. Then we're getting onto some of my latest RuneScape prints. So this is quite a cool one. This one is Lumbridge Castle. Look at that! Now this is another example of playing around with technology to see what I can do. So this castle is actually built in Minecraft, then exported as an object to then be printed. How cool is that? This was built in Minecraft, and then you can directly rip Minecraft builds to be 3D printed. And you end up with something like this. Lumbridge Castle. And finally, back to, we have the Spirit Shields. Well, not finally, I've got one more super cool thing to show off after this, but we have the 4 Spirit Shields here. These are quite cool, and more relevantly, I modelled these. These are made in Maya. The sigils are converted from pictures of the sigils to 3D objects, and you can't use the in-game. It started off with I just want to print some Spirit Shields, and then I found out the actual models in-game are super bumpy and look really bad and can't be properly 3D printed. So what I did was I used them as a guideline, but actually worked in Maya and learnt how to model just to make these. So I'm going to be doing some cool stuff in future, but these 4 shields were a big step in learning. Then finally, my most recent print. Look who it is! You might recognise that if you're a RuneScape player. This is the infamous Duriel321, I think his name was. And I've printed him as a full model, along with his weapons, hat, and shield and cape. Now you'll notice the difference between this fire cape And the last fire cape is this was done with me making the pattern online, converting it to an image, printing it out, and then putting it over a solid orange cape. So I've got the pattern exactly as I want it, and it looks a lot better. Got the shield. I printed the shield separately and glued it on afterwards, rather than with Niev's building it from the ground up. So this meant it was a lot easier to do, a lot quicker, and it looks a lot better with solid colours. Same for the whip. You wouldn't be able to print the whip like this if you had it as one solid object, because it's not attached to the ground. Printers need to build upwards. And again, I made the hat separately. I actually made this myself, modelled it, because the party hats in-game have a broken model for some reason, and you can't print them nicely, so I had to remake it. And then for his A-Room's top and bottoms, I printed the pattern on and put it on afterwards. So yeah, ended up with what I think looks pretty cool. So I rambled on a bit here and basically just spoke through in a lot of detail what I'd done to get to this point. So if you're not really interested in modelling, this video may have got a bit long on rambling, you just wanted to see the cool prints. So I'm going to show this off right at the end. Going to go through them one more time, just quickly flipping through them and tell people to skip to this end point. But I'm happy to answer any questions people have, and I hope you enjoyed looking at the cool models. So the other bit of feedback I'm looking for is, would people be interested in buying some of these? For example, I can't really sell something like this Zolra. The time required to make this was far more than I think anyone would ever consider a reasonable price. This took me multiple days' work, and I don't think I could charge anything reasonable to make more of the things like this, because people would just laugh at the prices I would require for multiple days of my time. But things like these spirit shields, now I've made them once, these are pretty simple to make, and if you wanted a spirit shield for your desk or whatever, maybe a keychain, I could make one of these relatively cheaply. I could perhaps sell spirit shield sets, something like that, for £20 to £30. Sort of handmade, hand-painted. I've sort of had a look on Etsy at what people are buying, but I think this could be... People kept asking me, can you buy these? And I keep telling them, no, I can't sell this because it takes too long to make. I don't think I could ever sell something like this, for example, because there are people who are much better artists than me who can make something like this for a lot cheaper and a lot quicker, and I don't have the right skill set for it. But when it comes to the actual modelling part, you can do some cool things and it not be too time consuming to produce more of them. So anyway, thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.